Welcome to Forum 360. Know Your Pharmacist is the title of our show, and I know you have questions about the drugs or pharmaceuticals that you've been prescribed. Or maybe you have a friend or relative who is among our older adult population, and your question deals with polypharmacy. Here to answer our questions is Tom Lamb, pharmacist, owner of Sandrun Pharmacy in Akron, and Harvey Krieger, pharmacist who practiced as an independent pharmacy. He's retired from CVS Pharmacy in the Valley in Akron. What is polypharmacy, Tom?
Sure. They find that as you age, they're saying that 47% of the population receives over 5 medications. So it's the multiple use of different medications, which includes over-the-counter medication. It could include herbal medications, and so it's this use of multiple medications.
And when you have an older patient, they're often taking more medications?
Most patients take a lot of, I mean, you could just have one disease like heart disease, and all of a sudden you end up with 5 or 6 medications.
And if you have 5 or 6 medications, who keeps track?
Well, I'll take that. It depends. It's best if you keep track. And by keeping track is that when you go to your physician, you should actually ask your physician what they are for. Why am I taking this? Et cetera, et cetera. When you go to your pharmacy, you can have that repeated. What are the side effects? It's really important to know this before you have a side effect. So if you're an older person, or maybe somebody who just can't keep track, somebody in your family may help you keep track, so then they have to know those also.
I know that older adults need better explanations for their drugs than the younger person. My mother, I have a story about her, and this is one of the reasons I was so interested in polypharmacy. Went to the hospital, was released from the hospital with maybe not enough explanation, I don't know, because she was older, and started taking those drugs as well as the drugs she had been taking. Because my husband latched on to her seeing yellow all the time, he probably saved her life, because if you take more than one cardiac pill, you double it up, you could die.
And it's important that you're an informed patient, and especially older people, when they're discharged from the hospital, they really need to have an advocate there with them, a family member or someone that helps them understand what they're taking the medications for and why they're taking them, the amount that they're taking them. And sometimes things get discontinued when a patient is in the hospital, and it's important that you know all of that. But I really think it's important to have an advocate, and then to take that list along with you to the pharmacy when you get your medications filled, so that they can be checked and double checked against that list, so that the patient does know what they're taking, what they're not to be taking, what they're for, side effects and things like that.
I think I'd like to expand a little bit on polypharmacy, because I don't think it's only taking, quote, 5 drugs or more, or whatever that, because it's also going to different pharmacies. So today, so many people go mail order. They have to, or it's less expensive. Very important, reasons to go mail order. They also may go to pharmacy A and/or, oh, I'm just going to stop off at pharmacy B after I get to the hospital because it's closer. Well, we don't know what you're taking from one to another. Our computers are not linked, and they're not allowed to be legally linked. And I remember a situation when a patient came into our store, and she got a prescription. It was actually a transfer from another store. We called a transfer because she wanted it at our store, and it was a 3.5 milligram medication for blood pressure. Okay, And so it was filled. The very next day, a prescription came over from her doctor for 50 milligrams twice a day for the same medication, from 3.5 to 50. She had been on 50. She went to the hospital. They reduced it because her blood pressure was way too low. So they reduced it. And then her doctor calls over what she had been taking. Well, we didn't know what happened. I called her doctor. They didn't know she was in the hospital. They didn't know it was reduced.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And do you see people going to multiple pharmacies on purpose?
I don't think that they're doing it on purpose. Sometimes their insurance does mandate it, like Harvey said. If they have a plan that mandates long-term medications being received through the mail order service. But I think it's really important that you get some sort of connection with your pharmacist so that you can go over these things. Even if you don't get it at that pharmacy, you need to make that pharmacy aware of things so that they can check to see if a possible mistake has been made, or a duplication, something that should have been discontinued, a change in dosage, like he's talking. But I think it's really important to communicate with that pharmacist, either you or your advocate, your family member, whoever is helping you through the medication.
So your pharmacist can keep a list of your medications as well as over-the-counter stuff. Is that something
It's
people
difficult
should...
to keep a list of the over-the-counter things, but you can present that list to your pharmacist. Because a lot of times, especially cardiac meds, you find patients on aspirin 81 milligrams or other over-the-counter vitamins and things like that the pharmacist is made aware of it, because some of those things, as simple as aspirin, can interact very easily with
warfarin.
Yeah, with other cardiac meds.
Right.
And you need to make sure you show that to the pharmacist, that they can go over and review it. For them to keep a list of it, typically that's not done.
Do you have a note section in your computer?
Yeah, we do keep notes.
So sometimes, I mean, I know there are some pharmacies that you can actually, I think, put the name of the drug, and it will come up with the interactions, because all of the computers today, if you're on drug A and then you get drug B, it will show you, and Tom has in his computer, if there's an interaction. Some of these interactions are very significant, others are rather insignificant. But
do you call the physician and say that there's a problem?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And does the physician respond to that well?
Let's hope they do. Especially, it depends on, like you said, there are different severities of interactions. There are some that are not as important, and sometimes they show interactions of something that's been discontinued. You have a new medication that shows that it's an interaction with drug B, and we find out later that that drug has been discontinued.
But we didn't know it at the time.
Uh-huh.
And again, that's why it's important to present all that information to your pharmacist.
Mm-hmm. And can you find that, or do you find that over-the-counter sometimes don't interact well with the pharmacy, or pharmaceuticals?
Sure.
Sure. And sometimes people think, oh, it's over the counter, it doesn't really matter, and that's so far from the truth. Perfect example is something like aspirin, along with other blood thinners. Make sure you or your family member tells that pharmacist.
And it doesn't even have to be aspirin. In this case, with warfarin, which is a rather common blood thinner. And most people know not to take aspirin, they're told, okay? But they're not necessarily told not to take ibuprofen or the Motrin type drugs, because that can also cause the same kind of reaction as aspirin. And just over-the-counter medications with each other. Like you may say, well, I got a headache, I'll take some ibuprofen. It's not getting any better, I'll take some aspirin with it. Well, then you get into just no one's talking to you about that. It's not a pharmacist, it's not a doctor, you're just going there, okay? Well, before you do that, because that could cause stomach ulcers.
And that's why it's important when you have issues like cough and cold or things like that. It's a perfect example of a time when you should talk to the pharmacist and ask for recommendations. And a lot of times they will ask you what medications you're on, and so that they can make an educated recommendation on things like that. Don't think that over-the-counter means does not cause harm or something like that when it's not taken properly.
And because clients, patients, sometimes go to different doctors. They may go to a heart specialist, they may go to their internist, they may go to bone doctor, whatever. I'm sure those doctors prescribe medications, and you're the ones who have to watch out for that.
Right, and we provide a list for patients that they can take to their physician of all the medications they are currently taking. But that's something that they should take along with them when they go to different doctors, especially the specialists. It's very important that they present all that information and keep it all together in a nice little list, and add and subtract things as things get changed or dosages get changed. Keep that up to date.
You know, your pharmacist could be the stopping point.
It's the gatekeeper.
Quote. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I have a lot of stories. You know, I'm old. And there was a situation where a lady came into the store and on drug A, and I can't remember, it's like 40 milligram 4 times a day, let's just say. And I got a prescription, again, almost similar to the same story, but this is from another physician, completely unrelated, a specialist, for a lesser amount once a day. So I called, and it's like, no, they didn't know that they went to the specialist. So there you go.
So there has to be somebody who's a gatekeeper, and you're it.
But I think what's really important,
aware.
right? And I think what's really important is if you were as a patient or as a caregiver for a patient, even if it's your child, that if you see something like you don't understand, do not understand, don't think, oh, it must be okay because I went to the doctor said or didn't say, but the pharmacist. No, I mean, it probably, most things are okay, but if you have any question, take the time to call your pharmacist. And the other thing I want to say is the way pharmacies are today, much different than they were when I was, originally practicing, extremely busy and not that many pharmacies around. There's much fewer. Take the time to give your pharmacist the courtesy to say, I have these questions, may I come in and talk to you about them when, or when can you call me back? Because you can't really just say, answer all my questions, I got 25 of them and I'm on the phone.
Yeah, courtesy, right.
Some people don't think that it's important to tell their GI doctor what their cardiac doctor prescribes, and that all kind of goes with keeping a drug list and keeping everybody informed and everybody on the same page.
Right. We're talking Know Your Pharmacist today, and with us are Tom Lamb, who is the owner of Sand Run Pharmacy in Akron and a pharmacist, and Harvey Krieger, pharmacist, who is retired as an independent pharmacy contractor, an independent pharmacy person, and is retired from CVS Pharmacy in the Valley in Akron. And we talked about polypharmacy, but we didn't talk about unused medications. What do you do with them?
Well, it used to be that you'd flush them down the toilet. That's not at all recommended because of the fact of getting it into the water supply. Most pharmacies in Summit County do have these disposal bags that you can get where you put them in, add some water. It does make them unusable. And I would suggest asking at your pharmacy if they have those available. I know it's something that we offer to our patients.
It's called a disposable bag.
It's a bag that has some granules in it. I'm not sure exactly what the exact name of it is, but it's a bag to dispose of unused medications. And it was mainly designed because of the opiates. People have extra tablets in their medicine chest. They have 3 or 4 tablets they want to hold on to. It's a way to get rid of those things so that they're not, used by inappropriately.
Yeah.
Most police stations have a place at the station where you can take your bag and give it to them.
Well, yeah.
It's a secure area. Not needles, though. You can't. I don't think you can put needles in there.
No.
Mm-hmm.
But
there are drop-off boxes,
Drop-off boxes for
and they
police
look like
stations.
old mailboxes where you can put your unused medications. I believe they ask you to deface your name on the labels, and then they're incinerated. That's another choice.
Yeah.
I believe in Summit County the program is called DUMP, D-U-M-P.
What color are the mailboxes?
I believe they're an off green, I believe. I'm not sure. But they are pretty well visible. And that is another way to get rid of medications.
I know I've saved medications on occasion. And then maybe 10 years later, I'll look at the label and think, oh, should get rid of that. And I don't know what to do with it. So disposal bags.
Well, the most important thing is if you save your medication, and this is what happens a lot, and I know Tom will say, oh yeah, somebody will say, I have a cold, or I don't feel well. And I have this antibiotic that I got, 6 months ago. Can I take it? Mm-hmm. They save it. People would save it. Well, I got another cold. Well, the antibiotic they have may have been for urinary tract infection. And if it's a cold and if it's a virus, an antibiotic won't do any good anyways. So it's not good to save that medication because you have the tendency to take it and not go get medical care.
Or to share with other family
Or to
members.
share.
Oh, I was going to ask you,
right.
is it ever okay to take drugs prescribed for another person?
Absolutely not. They are prescribed
Absolutely not.
for that person.
And how your wife is a veterinary pharmacist as well. And is it ever okay to give human drugs to animals?
It is, but only with the recommendation of a veterinarian is my suggestion.
Because I think I've been tempted to do that on occasion with
Yeah.
a pet.
Well, you have to know the dosage. I mean, you get a huge dog. Mm-hmm. That's one thing. You get a little dog and you still have the 1 milligram tablet. Well, that may be a real overdose for that dog.
Right, and the dosage range for a human can be a lot different than it is because of the way that an animal might metabolize it, and a dog versus a cat and things like that. You need to talk to your healthcare professional.
Like antihistamines don't work on dogs for itching, like your dog keeps scratching. So, I have this antihistamine. Well, no, they don't work on dogs. I mean, I'm not a veterinarian, but that's my understanding. They give them usually cortisone. So, there you go.
Are generics as good as the brand name?
I take generics all the time. Now, I do remember way back in the 70s when generics came out, and I was like, oh no, we're not going to dispense generics because there was that idea that they're not, quote, as good as the brand names. But therapeutically, they do exactly what the brand, they couldn't be on the market in the United States unless they were therapeutically and generically equivalent. So, and an insurance company will not pay for a brand name drug.
And I think it's important to know where your pharmacy is getting their medications because they want to buy them only from approved sources. We try hard in knowing where our sources are, our suppliers and things like that. We don't buy things that are, you get phone calls from people that can sell you things that are inexpensive. There's always a lot more to that than you want to buy things that are FDA approved here in the United States.
So that's where you have the trust between the pharmacist that you go to and or the company that you go to, and that is important.
Sometimes generics change their color or change their shape. Is that okay?
It is something that is a lot of times out of the control of the pharmacy, but yes, it is okay typically. And if you're unsure, give the pharmacist a call, ask them right then and there. We try to notify the patients if there are changes in color or other appearance.
It's extremely confusing when that happens. And I don't like it. I know when I had my own pharmacy, or I always tried to buy the same from the same company. Well, that's just not possible anymore. And with a chain pharmacy, you don't have that control of buying from the same company. And Tom may even not have that control, even though he owns his own business, because of price and/or because of availability. Okay, so what happens? You're always taking a blue tablet. Now you get a green tablet, and it says the same drug. And must be, no. Call.
One of mine is a purple tablet, and at one time changed to green.
Yeah. Did you call?
No, because it was explained to me at the pharmacy.
Well, that's fine. But if it's not explained to you at the pharmacy,
make a connection with that pharmacist or the staff there, so that those types of things don't happen.
Do patients sometimes think the change in color or shape doesn't work as well?
Yes. I get it. And usually it's for a pain medication. Am I right, Tom?
Probably. Yeah.
They'll say, well, or they'll call, do you have that oxycodone, which is an opioid, but I only want the yellow one. And as a pharmacist, you're like, really get suspicious. Well, are they really only like the yellow one, or is there some other reason they only want the yellow one? But therapeutically, no difference. But psychologically, and sometimes these could be, they really mean it. My blood pressure is never as good when I take the green one. I only want the yellow one. Most people can't feel their blood pressure, but they really feel that way.
You're mentioning opioids, and I think we should talk about that. In October 2017, prescription pain overdoses killed almost 100 Americans per day, more than motor vehicle accidents. What is being done about the opioid epidemic in this country as far as you're concerned?
Go ahead.
Sure. They are limiting on how much they can prescribe. Typically for minors, it's only a 5-day supply now that can be prescribed for acute use, 7-day supply for adults. There's a lot more regulations on us as the dispensers we check to see if they've had medications from other pharmacies, other prescribers, and things like that. They are definitely tightening down on the regulations to make sure that there is an actual need for it, that they're not playing the system.
And one of the reasons is like, and I think we may have talked before about this, when I had a knee operation, I got 50 Percocet, which is an opioid. And I knew, because I'm a pharmacist, I don't even want it, okay? I never filled it, okay? And I never used it. Well, I didn't fill it, so I didn't use it. But I just used ice and acetaminophen, Tylenol. Had I done that, filled it, and now they're sitting there.
What do I do with them now?
What do I do with them now? Do I have little kids at home? Do I have teenagers at home? At the time I didn't, but no, but that's a concern. Can somebody say, hey, you got something for pain, and maybe I'm the person, hey, yeah, take this. So if you limit how much you can get and for what reason from the physician, then you limit the extraneous use of that drug too, and that's the reason. And now I think if I had a knee operation, they'd probably give me 7 days worth of a less potent drug, and then if I needed more, I'd have to call and go get.
Yeah, they're really restricting the prescribers and us as people dispensing it, because it needs to be. There was a time when it was given out much more freer than it is now. And I don't know if that is what has put us in this situation, but it has probably attributed to it. And there's no doubt these regulations have reduced the number of opiates that are dispensed in the state of Ohio.
They can still get them elsewhere maybe, but at least as far as
you got to start at home.
Yeah. The shingles vaccine. When we talked, you mentioned that there's a new edition.
There is a new one that's out. It's been out about a month now. A much higher protection rate of over 90-some%. So much better than what we had in the past. The old one only covered 50%. This is a much higher coverage rate. It is a series of 2 vaccines. First one is given, and then it's repeated in 2 to 6 months after that. You need to check with your pharmacy to see if it's covered by your insurance. It's approved. Anybody age 50 and above. Insurance plans are different, and everybody's insurance is unique to them to see what the coverage rate is. But I would highly recommend it. If you know anybody who's ever had shingles, that's your best advertising to get the vaccine.
Bad disease.
And you can actually just go into the pharmacy and ask for the shingles
No
shot.
prescription is
You
necessary.
don't need a prescription, just like a flu shot. you know.
Okay.
And if you've had shingles, still get the shingles vaccine. And if you have any questions, talk to your pharmacist, talk to your physician about it.
We have a ton more questions.
Yes, we
but we're
probably
out of
do.
time. And I thank you,
Thank you.
Tom, and I thank you, Harvey, for joining me today to talk about pharmacy and pharmacists and what you should do. This is Ardith Keck for Forum 360.
Forum 360 is brought to you with support from Electric Impulse Communications, Kim and Harvey Nelson, Rubber City Radio Group, Akronist.com, Hudson Cable, Medical Mutual of Ohio, Forum 360 supporters, and the Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron.